Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, the temples of Malta. Ancient structures so sophisticated, so precisely engineered, that mainstream archaeology cannot explain how primitive humans built them. The official story says hunter-gatherers with stone tools somehow constructed monuments that modern engineers would struggle to replicate. But what if that story is a lie? What if the first temples weren't built by humans at all? The story I'm about to share is not speculation. It is not theory. It is what one man learned when he rescued a being that should not exist and received in return knowledge that has been suppressed since the dawn of civilization, the true origin of the first temples, the real purpose they were designed to serve, and why that purpose has been hidden from humanity for over 12,000 years. I must warn you, this truth will demolish everything you thought you knew about human history. It will make you question why this knowledge was concealed. It will reveal that the structures our ancestors worshipped at were never meant to honor gods. They were built for something far more profound and far more dangerous to those who control our world today. If you've ever wondered why ancient temples share impossible similarities across cultures that never met, why their alignments encode astronomical knowledge that supposedly hadn't been discovered, why they were built in locations of unusual energy that modern science still cannot explain, this story will finally give you the answers that have been kept from you. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because what Victor Anderson discovered when he rescued a strange visitor in the mountains of Turkey will expose the hidden truth behind humanity's most sacred structures. Now let me tell you how it all began. Şanlıurfa Province, Turkey, October 14th, 4:23 a.m. Victor Anderson couldn't sleep. Again. He sat on the balcony of his rented apartment, staring out at the darkness that hid the ancient hills where humanity's oldest known temple had been discovered. Göbekli Tepe was less than 10 miles away, closed to visitors at this hour, but Victor could feel it pulling at him like a magnet. At 52, he had spent 28 years as an archaeologist. The last 15 focused exclusively on the mystery of Göbekli Tepe and its impossible implications. A temple complex built 12,000 years ago by people who were supposed to be primitive hunter-gatherers. Massive T-shaped pillars carved with sophisticated artwork, precise astronomical alignments, engineering that defied everything the academic establishment claimed to know about human development. Victor had published papers questioning the mainstream narrative, had presented evidence that the site required knowledge and organization far beyond what nomadic tribes could possess, had suggested that perhaps, just perhaps, the timeline of human civilization needed to be radically revised. The academic world had responded by destroying his career. His funding had been cut, his university position eliminated in a convenient restructuring, his papers rejected by journals that once competed to publish his work. Colleagues who had praised his brilliance suddenly couldn't remember his name. The message was clear. Some questions were not meant to be asked, but Victor couldn't stop asking them, even after losing his position, even after his wife Elena had left, unable to watch him sacrifice everything for questions nobody wanted answered, even after he had burned through his savings to continue research that no institution would support. He had come to Turkey 6 months ago with the last of his money, renting this cheap apartment, bribing guards for after-hours access to the site, taking measurements and photographs that he hoped might someday vindicate everything he had sacrificed. Elena had been dead for 3 months now. Car accident on a rain-slicked highway in Connecticut. She had been on her way to see their daughter, the daughter who blamed Victor for the divorce and hadn't spoken to him in 2 years. Victor hadn't been able to attend the funeral. No money for flights, no welcome from a family that had written him off as a casualty of his own obsession. He sat on the balcony drinking cheap Turkish coffee and wondered, not for the first time, whether any of it had been worth it. The questions, the sacrifices, the ruins of a life that had once seemed so promising. The hills were beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn when Victor saw the light. Not sunrise, something else. A streak of blue-white luminescence descending from the sky, disappearing behind a ridge maybe 2 miles from his apartment. Not a shooting star. Too slow. Too controlled. Something that seemed to be landing rather than falling. Victor was on his feet before he knew he had moved. His camera, his flashlight, his boots, laced with fingers that trembled from something that wasn't cold. 28 years of asking forbidden questions about impossible structures, and now something impossible had just fallen from the sky, practically in his backyard. He drove his battered rental car along dirt roads that wound through the hills, following the direction of the light. The terrain grew rougher. Eventually, he had to abandon the car and continue on foot, scrambling over rocks in the gray pre-dawn. He found the crater first, small, maybe 10 feet across, the earth around it scorched but not burning, and at the center, something that made his breath stop. A craft, damaged. Metallic but organic somehow, like technology grown rather than built. And beside it, slumped against a boulder, a figure. Victor approached slowly, his scientific mind cataloging details even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Gray skin, elongated limbs, a face that was almost human but not quite, with eyes too large and features too refined. The figure was injured. A dark fluid that might have been blood seeped from a wound on its torso. Its breathing was shallow, rapid, wrong. Victor knelt beside it. "Can you hear me? Can you understand me?" The eyes opened, vast and dark, holding depths that seemed to extend far beyond their physical surface. And then a voice, not in Victor's ears, but in his mind. "You came. I was not certain anyone would. You're hurt. I need to get you help, medical attention. Human medicine cannot help me, but you can. My vessel is damaged. I require shelter while I attempt repairs. If you can provide that, I will survive." Victor looked at the craft, at the being, at the impossible situation he had stumbled into. "I have an apartment. It's not much, but you'd be hidden there. Can you move?" "With assistance. I am weaker than I should be. The entry into your atmosphere was more damaging than anticipated." Victor helped the being to its feet. It was lighter than he expected, as if its bones were hollow like a bird's. They moved slowly back toward the car, the being leaning heavily on Victor's shoulder. "Why are you here?" Victor asked as they walked. "Why come to this place?" "Because of what lies beneath these hills, the structure you have been studying. I came to observe it, to verify that it remains intact after all these millennia." Victor's heart lurched. "Göbekli Tepe? You know about Göbekli Tepe?" "I know more than that, Victor Anderson. I know who built it. I know why it was built. And I know why that knowledge has been hidden from your species for 12,000 years. They reached the car. Victor helped the being into the back seat, covering it with a blanket that barely concealed its inhuman form. "You're going to tell me about who really built the temples. You have sacrificed everything seeking this truth. Your career, your marriage, your relationship with your daughter. You have earned the answer to your questions. Once I have recovered enough to show you properly, I will reveal what the first temples truly are and why humanity was never meant to know." Victor started the engine and drove back toward his apartment, his hands steady on the wheel, despite the impossibility of what sat behind him. 28 years of forbidden questions, a ruined career, a dead ex-wife he had never stopped loving, a daughter who wouldn't speak to him, all of it leading to this moment, this being, this promise of truth that might finally justify everything he had lost. The sun rose over the hills of Turkey as Victor drove, painting the ancient landscape gold. Somewhere beneath that landscape, Göbekli Tepe waited, and its secrets were about to be revealed. Victor's apartment was small and sparse, a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen that doubled as a living room. The walls were covered with photographs and diagrams of Göbekli Tepe, strings connecting images and patterns that only Victor understood. He helped the being onto his bed, the only furniture substantial enough to hold even its slight weight. In the morning light filtering through thin curtains, the creature looked even more otherworldly. Its skin had a faint luminescence as if lit from within. The wound on its torso still seeped that dark fluid, but the flow seemed to be slowing. "What do you need?" Victor asked. "To heal, to repair your vessel." "What can I do?" "Rest. Time. The damage is significant but not fatal. My physiology will repair itself within a day, perhaps two. The vessel is another matter. I will need to retrieve components once I am strong enough to move." Victor nodded, then realized how absurd the situation was. He was nodding at an extraterrestrial being lying in his bed in a Turkish apartment, discussing repair schedules as if this were a normal problem to solve. Can I ask you something while you rest? You have many questions. I can feel them pressing against your mind like water against a dam. Ask. How do you know my name? How do you know about my career, my marriage, all of it? We observe. We have been observing your species for longer than your recorded history. Those who ask the questions you have been asking create ripples in consciousness that we can perceive. You have been observed specifically for many years. Your persistence despite opposition, your willingness to sacrifice everything for truth. These qualities are rare and valuable. Victor pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. Why observe? What interest could beings like you possibly have in humanity? That is connected to why I came here, to why the temples were built. All of it is part of a larger story that I will share with you. But first, you must understand something about my kind. The being's eyes closed for a moment, and Victor worried it had lost consciousness. But then it spoke again, its mental voice weaker, but still clear. We are old, Victor. Old by standards you cannot comprehend. We were present when the first temples were constructed on this world. We did not build them ourselves, but we guided those who did. We provided knowledge, technology, understanding that your species was not yet ready to develop on its own. So humans did build them? With your help? Not the humans you imagine, not primitive hunter-gatherers struggling to survive. The humans who built the first temples were different. They were part of a civilization that your history has forgotten. A civilization that rose and fell before what you call recorded history began. Victor leaned forward. This was exactly what he had theorized. A lost civilization, advanced knowledge, the missing piece that explained how Göbekli Tepe could exist. Atlantis? Are you talking about Atlantis? That name is a Greek echo of something older. The civilization I speak of had many names in many regions. They were global, sophisticated. They understood principles of consciousness and energy that your modern science is only beginning to rediscover. And they built the first temples not as places of worship, but as something far more functional. What function? What were they really for? That I will show you, when I have recovered enough to take you there, to Göbekli Tepe itself. At night, when no guards will interfere, the truth cannot be told. It must be experienced. Victor sat back in his chair, mind racing. Years of rejected papers and ridiculed theories, and now an extraterrestrial being was confirming everything he had suspected. Why was it hidden? Why doesn't mainstream archaeology accept any of this? Because the truth about the temples threatens everything your civilization is built upon. The structures of power, the systems of control, the religions that have dominated human consciousness for millennia. If humanity understood what the temples really are, what they really do, everything would change. Those who benefit from the current arrangement have worked very hard to ensure that understanding never spreads. A conspiracy? You're saying there's an active effort to suppress this knowledge? Not a conspiracy in the way you imagine, not a secret group meeting in dark rooms. Something more subtle. A consensus that certain questions are not asked, certain evidence is not examined, certain researchers are marginalized and discredited. You experienced this yourself, Victor. You know how the suppression works. Victor did know. The funding that vanished, the colleagues who turned away, the journals that suddenly lost interest in his work. He had always assumed it was academic politics, professional jealousy, the normal friction of challenging established ideas. But what if it was something more? Something coordinated at a level he couldn't perceive? Who's behind it? Who benefits from keeping this hidden? That is a complex question with no simple answer, but I will say this. The truth about the temples is not just historical. It is not merely academic. The temples were built to do something that is still possible, something that could transform human consciousness if it were reactivated. Those who control your world do not want that transformation to occur. The being's eyes closed again. This time, Victor could see that it genuinely needed rest. The luminescence of its skin had dimmed. Its breathing had become slower, steadier. Sleep, Victor said. Rest. We can talk more when you've recovered. There is one more thing you should know before I rest. What? Your wife. Elena. She did not die by accident. Victor felt his heart stop. What are you saying? I am saying that her death occurred at a very convenient time, shortly after you had made a breakthrough in your research. Shortly after you had discovered something that the suppressors could not allow to become public. I cannot prove causation, but the timing is significant. Victor's hands began to shake. Elena, his brilliant, patient, long-suffering Elena, who had finally given up on him and walked away, who had died on a rain-slicked highway while he was here, chasing questions that had cost him everything. Are you telling me she was murdered? Because of my research? I am telling you that there are forces in your world that will go to great lengths to protect the secret of the temples. Whether Elena's death was caused by those forces or merely coincided with their interests, I cannot say. But you should know that your work has consequences beyond academia. You have been threatening something powerful, and powerful things fight back. Victor sat in silence, trying to process this. His career destroyed was one thing. His marriage ending was painful, but understandable. But Elena dead? Not an accident, but a message? I tell you this not to cause pain, but to help you understand the stakes. What I will show you at Göbekli Tepe is not merely interesting historical information. It is knowledge that could change the world. And there are those who will do anything to prevent that change. The being's eyes finally closed completely. Its breathing settled into a rhythm that suggested genuine sleep, or whatever passed for sleep among its kind. Victor sat in the chair for hours, watching the impossible creature rest, thinking about Elena, thinking about his daughter who wouldn't speak to him, thinking about 28 years of questions that had led him to this moment. If Elena had been killed because of his research, then her death had meaning. Terrible meaning, but meaning nonetheless. She hadn't died randomly on a wet highway. She had died because Victor was getting too close to something that mattered. He didn't know if that made the grief better or worse, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever the being had to show him at Göbekli Tepe, he was going to see it. Whatever truth had cost him everything was going to be revealed. And then, the people who had taken Elena from him, who had destroyed his career, who had suppressed the knowledge of the temples for 12,000 years, were going to face a reckoning. Victor didn't know how, he didn't know when, but he knew it would come. The truth always did. 2 days passed, the being healed faster than Victor had thought possible. By the second evening, it was standing, moving around the small apartment, examining Victor's photographs and diagrams with what seemed like approval. Your analysis is remarkably accurate for someone working without direct knowledge. You identified patterns that most of your colleagues dismissed as coincidence. I always knew there was something more, Victor said. The alignments, the precision, the way temples across the world share design elements despite being built by cultures that supposedly never met. It couldn't be coincidence. It was not. Tonight I will show you what it really was. Are you prepared to go to the site? Victor had been preparing for 2 days, bribes arranged with the night guards, a route planned that would avoid the security cameras, equipment packed that would allow them to access areas normally closed to researchers. I'm ready. They drove through the darkness, the being concealed under a heavy cloak that hid its features. The guards Victor had paid off were at the gate, as promised. Money changed hands. Questions were not asked. Within minutes, Victor was walking among the ancient pillars of Göbekli Tepe with a being from another world. The site was different at night. The massive T-shaped pillars cast strange shadows in the moonlight. The carved animals seemed to move, their eyes following Victor as he walked between them. The air itself felt charged, as if electricity were building toward a discharge that never came. This is the oldest known temple complex on your world, but it is not the oldest temple. There are others, buried deeper, that your archaeologists have not yet found. This is merely the first layer of something far more vast. How old? How old are the deepest structures? The deepest structures beneath this site were built approximately 30,000 years ago. They have been buried deliberately, covered by later construction, hidden from a humanity that was not ready to understand them. 30,000 years. Victor's mind reeled. That predated every timeline of human civilization. That suggested a history so different from the accepted narrative that it would rewrite every textbook ever printed. Come, I will show you what these structures really are. The being led Victor to the center of the main enclosure, where the largest pillars stood. It placed one long hand against the carved surface of a pillar, and suddenly light blazed from the stone itself. Not reflected light, light that emanated from within, following patterns carved into the rock, illuminating channels that Victor had never noticed despite years of study. Watch. The light spread from pillar to pillar, connecting them in a web of luminous energy. And then the air itself began to shimmer, and Victor was no longer standing in the ruins of an ancient site. He was standing in that site as it had been when it was new. The pillars gleamed with polished surfaces. The carvings were sharp and fresh, painted in colors that had long since faded, and the entire complex hummed with energy, a vibration Victor could feel in his teeth, in his bones, in something deeper than his physical body. You are seeing Göbekli Tepe as it existed 12,000 years ago. This is not imagination. This is memory, stored in the stone itself, activated by frequencies your instruments cannot detect. People moved through the complex, not the primitive hunter-gatherers of academic theory. They wore sophisticated clothing. They carried devices that looked like technology. They moved with purpose and intelligence, maintaining the site, adjusting equipment Victor couldn't identify. Who are they? They are humans. Your ancestors, but not the ancestors your history books describe. These were members of a global civilization that understood principles your science is only beginning to rediscover. They built the first temples not as places of worship, but as nodes in a planetary network. A network for what? The being gestured, and the vision expanded. Victor saw the earth from above, saw lines of light connecting points across the globe. Göbekli Tepe was one node, but there were others, hundreds of others, sites Victor recognized: the Giza Plateau, Stonehenge, Angkor Wat, Machu Picchu, and sites he didn't recognize, buried under jungles and deserts and oceans. The temples were consciousness technology. Each one was positioned at a point where Earth's natural energy was concentrated. Together, they formed a grid that amplified and distributed that energy across the planet. Energy for what purpose? For human evolution. The temples created fields that enhanced human consciousness. Within their influence, the mind expanded. Intuition sharpened. The barriers between physical perception and deeper reality became thin. Humans exposed to these fields could access knowledge and abilities that modern humans have forgotten they possess. Victor watched the vision of the ancient world, the web of light connecting sacred sites, humanity thriving within fields of expanded consciousness. What happened? Why did it end? The same thing that always happens when civilizations reach certain levels of power: conflict, division. The technology that could elevate all of humanity was turned toward domination. Factions arose who wanted to control the network rather than share it. Wars were fought with weapons that make your nuclear arsenals seem primitive. The vision darkened. Victor saw the web of light flicker and fail, saw cities burning, saw the global civilization tearing itself apart in conflicts that spanned continents. The network was damaged beyond repair. The civilization collapsed. The survivors scattered, carrying fragments of knowledge that would eventually become the myths and religions of your current era. The temples remained, but their true function was forgotten. They became places of worship rather than technology. Humanity fell into a sleep from which it is only now beginning to wake. And the builders? What happened to them? Some died in the conflicts. Some retreated to isolated places where they tried to preserve knowledge. Some chose to forget, to blend into the populations of survivors and start again. Over generations, the memory of what had been was lost. Only the stones remained. The vision faded. Victor found himself standing again in the moonlit ruins, the pillars dark and silent around him. Can it be rebuilt? The network? Can the temples be reactivated? That is the question that has driven the suppression for 12,000 years. Yes, it can be rebuilt. The Earth's energy grid still exists. The points of power are still active. The temples, though damaged, retain the potential for their original function. What is missing is the knowledge of how to activate them, and the collective consciousness necessary to use them without repeating the mistakes of the past. Victor thought about everything he had studied: the astronomical alignments that connected sites across the world, the geometric relationships that seemed too precise to be coincidental, the reports of unusual experiences at sacred sites, dismissed by mainstream science as imagination or fraud. The suppression, he said. You mentioned suppression. Who is suppressing this? How? The suppressors are not a single group. They are a consensus of interests that benefits from humanity remaining asleep. Some are aware of what they're doing, most are not. They simply respond to institutional pressures that discourage certain questions, defund certain research, marginalize certain voices. The being moved to another pillar, tracing its carved surface with one long finger. Consider, what would happen if humanity understood that consciousness could be technologically enhanced, that the barriers between minds could be lowered? That access to expanded awareness was not the province of rare mystics, but the birthright of every human being? The systems of control would collapse, Victor said slowly. Governments, corporations, religions, everything built on hierarchy and information asymmetry would become obsolete. Precisely. The technology of the temples is not neutral. It is inherently democratizing. It empowers individuals. It connects minds in ways that make manipulation and deception nearly impossible. Those who benefit from the current arrangement have every reason to ensure this technology remains forgotten. But you said the knowledge was lost. How can they suppress something that doesn't exist anymore? The knowledge was not entirely lost. Fragments survived. Mystery schools, secret societies, indigenous traditions that preserved pieces of the ancient understanding. Throughout your history, there have been those who came close to rediscovering the truth. And throughout your history, those individuals have been silenced. Victor thought about his own career, the funding cut without explanation, the colleagues who turned away, the papers rejected without review. I was getting too close. That's why they destroyed my career. You were asking questions that led toward the truth. Your analysis of the alignments, your mathematical modeling of the relationships between sites. Another few years of research, and you might have reconstructed enough to begin understanding the network's true nature. And Elena? You said her death might not have been an accident. The being was silent for a moment. I cannot tell you with certainty what happened to Elena, but I can tell you that you made a significant breakthrough 3 weeks before she died. You sent a draft paper to a colleague. That paper contained analysis that came closer to the truth than anything published in modern times. Within days of sending it, your funding was canceled. Within weeks, Elena was dead. Victor felt rage building in his chest. Cold, focused rage unlike anything he had experienced before. Who? Who did this? Give me names. There are no names I can give you. The suppression does not work through individuals who can be identified and confronted. It works through systems, through incentives, through the gradual pressure that shapes what is acceptable to research, to publish, to discuss. The people who rejected your papers did not know they were serving a larger agenda. They simply responded to institutional signals that told them your work was dangerous. Then how do I fight it? How do I expose what they've hidden? By doing exactly what you have been doing, asking questions, gathering evidence, and now, by receiving knowledge directly from a source they cannot discredit or silence. The being moved back to the center of the enclosure. There is more I must show you. The network is not only about consciousness enhancement, it serves another purpose that is even more important for your current moment. What purpose? The temples were designed to stabilize Earth's energy field. Your planet is not simply a rock orbiting a star. It is a living system with its own consciousness, its own cycles, its own health. The temple network helped maintain that health. It balanced energies that would otherwise become destructive. It prevented accumulations of negativity that could manifest as natural disasters, as plagues, as collective madness. And without the network? Without the network, Earth's energy field has become increasingly unstable. The negativity generated by human consciousness, the fear, the hatred, the disconnection, accumulates without release. It manifests in the disasters you attribute to climate change, in the epidemics you attribute to viruses, in the conflicts you attribute to politics. These are symptoms of a deeper imbalance that the temple network was designed to prevent. Victor looked around at the silent pillars, ancient technology sitting dormant while the world spiraled toward crisis. Can the network be reactivated without the full knowledge? Is there any way to restore even partial function? There are ways. Small groups working at individual sites can create localized effects. Meditation, ceremony, focused intention at places of power. These practices, dismissed as superstition by your mainstream culture, are actually remnants of the original technology. They work because consciousness interacts with the Earth's energy field. They are weak because they lack the amplification the full network would provide. But if enough people engaged with enough sites in enough coordination, partial reactivation would be possible. This is why the suppression has intensified in recent decades. As more humans awaken to the reality of consciousness, as more people are drawn to sacred sites, as more groups practice focused intention at places of power, the potential for reactivation grows. The suppressors are fighting against an awakening they cannot entirely control. The being raised one hand, and the air shimmered again. Victor saw a possible future, the temple network partially restored, points of light flickering to life across the globe, human consciousness expanding, connecting, evolving, a world transforming from within. This is what could be, what will be, if humanity makes the right choices. The knowledge cannot remain suppressed forever. It is resurfacing through 1,000 channels. Researchers like yourself, experiencers who have touched expanded states, indigenous peoples reclaiming their traditions. The truth is rising, Victor, and nothing can stop it now. Then why do they keep trying? If the awakening is inevitable, why suppress at all? Because delay serves their interests. Every year humanity remains asleep is another year the current structures of power remain intact. Every breakthrough prevented is another lifetime of profits, another generation of control. They know they cannot stop the awakening forever. They simply want to postpone it as long as possible. Victor stood in the moonlit ruins, surrounded by stones that had witnessed the rise and fall of a civilization far greater than his own. The scope of what he was learning was almost too vast to hold. "What about Elena?" he asked quietly. "Is there any way to know if she's okay? If she survived death the way others have described?" Consciousness does not end with physical death. This is another truth the temples were designed to demonstrate. The network facilitated communication between dimensions, between the living and those who had transitioned. Elena's consciousness continues. "Can I reach her? Can I communicate with her?" You can, but not through technology or ritual, through intention, through love. The connection between souls who have loved each other does not require external amplification. It exists regardless of death, regardless of distance. If you quiet your mind and open your heart, you will find her waiting. Victor closed his eyes. He thought of Elena, her laugh, her patience, the way she had believed in him even when the world turned away, the way she had finally left because she couldn't watch him destroy himself anymore. And then he felt her. Not a vision, not a voice, just presence, warmth, love that had never ended, only changed form. Victor, not the being's voice, Elena's, familiar and impossible, and absolutely real. "I'm here. I've been here the whole time." "Elena," the word came out as a sob. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I drove you away. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you died." "You were exactly where you needed to be, doing exactly what you needed to do. I didn't understand that when I was alive. I do now. They killed you because of my research. Maybe, or maybe it was simply my time. What matters is what you do with what remains. The truth you've been seeking is real, Victor. Everything you sacrificed, everything we both sacrificed, it wasn't for nothing. I miss you so much." "I know, but I'm not gone. I'm just in a different room, and one day, when your work here is done, you'll join me. Until then, live. Finish what you started. Let our daughter know that we both love her, even if she can't hear it yet." The presence began to fade. Victor reached for it, desperate to hold on. "Let me go for now, but know that I'm proud of you. What you're about to do will matter more than you can imagine." And then she was gone, and Victor was standing in the ruins with tears streaming down his face, the being watching him with ancient, patient eyes. Love transcends all barriers. This was the deepest teaching of the temple builders, not philosophy, not religion. Simply the recognition that consciousness connected through love cannot be separated by anything, not death, not time, not the illusion of physical distance. Victor wiped his eyes. The grief was still there, but it had transformed into something else. Fuel, purpose, a reason to continue that went beyond academic curiosity. "What do I do now?" he asked. "How do I use what you've shown me?" You document everything. You write what you have learned in forms that can be understood. You share it with those who are ready to hear. And you continue the work that Elena died for, whether her death was caused by the suppressors or simply coincided with your breakthrough. My daughter, Sarah, she won't even speak to me. She will. The same awakening that is spreading across your planet is touching her as well. She has been having dreams of temples and ancient knowledge, dreams of her father standing among pillars that glow with light. She doesn't understand these dreams yet, but she will. And when she does, she will seek you out. Victor thought about Sarah, 24 years old, so angry at him for choosing work over family, so hurt by the divorce and then by Elena's death. He hadn't spoken to her in over 2 years. How do you know this? About her dreams? We have observed you, we observe those connected to you. Sarah is part of this story, whether she knows it yet or not. The work you are doing is not just for yourself, it is for her children, for generations that will inherit either an awakened world or a sleeping one. The being moved toward the exit of the enclosure. Dawn is approaching. We should return before the day guards arrive. But there is one more thing I must tell you before we leave this place. What? The temples were not built solely for humanity. They serve a function in a larger network that extends beyond your planet. Earth is a node in a galactic grid of consciousness technology. When your temple network is reactivated, it will reconnect your world to that larger grid. And when that reconnection occurs, humanity will no longer be isolated. You will take your place among civilizations that have been waiting for you to wake up for a very long time. Victor looked up at the stars, visible between the ancient pillars, points of light that suddenly seemed less random, more like nodes in a network he was only beginning to perceive. We're not alone. You have never been alone. You have simply been quarantined, a young species working through its developmental challenges, isolated until it was ready to join the larger community. The reactivation of the temple network will end that quarantine. It will mark humanity's graduation from adolescence to maturity. And that's why the suppressors are so desperate. They're not just protecting their power on Earth, they're trying to prevent contact. Some of them, yes, the most aware among them understand what reactivation would mean. They are not simply protecting terrestrial institutions, they are trying to keep humanity isolated from influences they cannot control. They will fail. The awakening is already too far advanced, but they will cause great damage in their attempts to delay it. Victor followed the being out of the enclosure, back through the site, back toward the car that would take them to his apartment. His mind overflowed with everything he had learned. Temples as consciousness technology, a lost civilization, a global network waiting to be reactivated. Elena still existing, still loving him, still proud of what he was doing. Sarah dreaming dreams that would eventually lead her back to him. And above it all, the promise of connection. Not just to the dead, not just to the living, but to civilizations beyond Earth who had been waiting for humanity to finally grow up. The sun was beginning to lighten the eastern sky as they drove back toward Victor's apartment. A new day, a new chapter, a truth that would change everything. Victor didn't know how he would share what he had learned, didn't know who would believe him, didn't know what the suppressors would do when they realized he had received knowledge they had spent millennia hiding. But he knew he would try, for Elena, for Sarah, for every human being who had ever looked at an ancient temple and felt that there was more to the story than they had been told. The temples were waiting, the network was waiting, the stars were waiting, and Victor Anderson was finally ready to tell the truth. The being stayed for 3 more days while it retrieved and installed components to repair its vessel. Victor used that time to document everything, pages of notes, diagrams of the network he had been shown, transcripts of every conversation, every revelation, every piece of knowledge that had been shared. On the final morning, the being stood at the door of Victor's apartment, its vessel hidden in the hills where Victor had first found it, now fully functional. You have received what you need. The rest is up to you. Will I see you again? Perhaps. Consciousness that has connected deeply tends to reconnect, but even if we do not meet again in your physical lifetime, know that you are being observed, supported. You are not alone in this work. Thank you for everything, for confirming what I always suspected, for showing me Elena, for giving me a reason to keep going. Thank yourself. You earned this knowledge through 28 years of sacrifice. All I did was deliver what was already yours." The being moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Your daughter will call you in 11 days. When she does, do not overwhelm her with everything you have learned. Simply tell her that you love her, that you are sorry for the pain you caused, that you understand if she cannot forgive you yet. The rest will come in time." Victor nodded, not questioning how the being could know such things. After everything he had experienced, prophecy seemed like a minor miracle. The temples are waiting, Victor. The network is waiting, and humanity is closer to awakening than it has been in 12,000 years. Play your part. Trust that others are playing theirs. Light enveloped the being. It lifted from the ground and moved toward the hills, toward the vessel that would carry it back to wherever it had come from. Within moments, it was gone, leaving Victor alone in his apartment, with walls covered in photographs of sites whose true purpose he now understood. He spent the first week organizing his notes, creating a structure for everything he had learned: the history of the lost civilization, the function of the temple network, the suppression and who benefited from it, the potential for reactivation, the connection to a larger galactic community. It was too much for a single document, too complex for any one medium. He would need to approach this from multiple angles, through multiple channels, reaching different audiences in different ways. The academic world was closed to him. They had made that clear years ago. But the academic world was not the only path to truth. There were researchers outside the mainstream, investigators who had been asking similar questions, communities of seekers who sensed that the official narrative was incomplete. He would start there, build credibility among those already open to alternative perspectives, then gradually expand, reaching wider audiences as the message proved itself. On the 11th day after the being's departure, Victor's phone rang. An American number he didn't recognize immediately. Then he did. Sarah. His hands trembled as he answered. "Hello?" "Dad." Her voice was uncertain, guarded, but she had called. She had actually called. "Sarah, I'm so glad to hear from you." Silence. Then, "I've been having dreams, strange dreams, about temples and ancient ruins, about you standing among pillars that were glowing with light. I don't know why I'm calling. I just felt like I needed to." Victor remembered what the being had said. Don't overwhelm her. Start simple. "I love you, Sarah. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I understand if you can't forgive me yet." He heard her breath catch. "Mom's funeral. You weren't there. I needed you, and you weren't there." "I know. I couldn't afford the flight. I had spent everything on research that seemed more important than anything else. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things." "The research." Her voice hardened slightly. "The obsession that destroyed our family." "The research was real, Sarah. Everything I suspected was true. I can't prove it to you right now, but I've learned things that change everything. And your dreams, the ones you've been having, they're connected to what I've discovered." Another long silence. Then, "I don't know what to believe anymore. Mom's gone. You're on the other side of the world chasing ghosts, and I keep dreaming about places I've never been, seeing things that can't be real." "They're real. Your dreams are real. And when you're ready, I'll tell you everything. But for now, just know that I love you, that I never stopped loving you or your mother, and that everything I sacrificed, everything we all sacrificed, it wasn't for nothing." Sarah didn't say she forgave him. She didn't say she believed him, but she didn't hang up either. They talked for an hour, carefully about safe topics, about her work, about her life, about the grandmother who was helping her process Elena's death. When they finally said goodbye, Sarah promised to call again. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Victor returned to his work with renewed purpose. The connection with Sarah had reminded him why any of this mattered, not for academic vindication, not for proving his colleagues wrong, but for the future, for the generations that would inherit whatever world the current moment created. 3 months after the encounter, Victor left Turkey. He had learned what he came to learn. Now he needed to share it. He traveled to conferences that mainstream archaeology ignored, gatherings of alternative researchers, spiritual seekers, indigenous wisdom keepers. He spoke about what he had learned, carefully, testing which aspects resonated and which met resistance. The response was overwhelming. People who had experienced their own glimpses of the truth, researchers who had noticed the same patterns he had documented, indigenous elders who carried fragments of the ancient knowledge in their oral traditions, a global community of seekers who recognized that the official story was incomplete. Victor became a node in a network of truth seekers, not the most famous or influential, just one voice among many, adding his piece to a puzzle that countless others were also assembling. 6 months after the encounter, Sarah came to visit him in London, where he had settled temporarily. She had continued having dreams. They had intensified, become more detailed, more urgent. She needed to understand what they meant. Victor told her everything: the being in Turkey, the vision at Göbekli Tepe, the temple network and its true purpose, the suppression and why it existed, Elena's continued existence and the message she had sent. Sarah listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Mom spoke to you? She said she was proud of you?" "She said she was proud of both of us. She said to tell you that she loves you, even if you can't hear her directly yet." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I've felt her sometimes, at night, like she's standing just outside my vision. I thought I was imagining it." "You weren't. She's there. The connection doesn't end with death. That's one of the things the temples were designed to demonstrate. The barrier between dimensions is thinner than we've been taught. And my dreams, the temples I keep seeing." "You're connected to this somehow, Sarah. The being said you would be part of this story. I don't know what that means exactly, but you're being called, just like I was called." Sarah stayed for 2 weeks. She visited the sites Victor had documented, read his research, met some of the people in the network he had built. By the time she left, she wasn't fully convinced of everything her father believed, but she was no longer dismissing it either. "I need time," she said at the airport. "Time to process all of this. Time to figure out what I believe." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." "I know." She hugged him, the first real hug in years. "I love you, Dad. I don't understand you, but I love you." 1 year after the encounter, Victor published his first book. Self-published, like so many others carrying truths the mainstream wasn't ready to accept. He titled it, "Before the Temples, the Hidden Network That Connected the Ancient World." It found its audience, not the academic establishment, not the mainstream media, but the growing community of people who sensed that humanity's history was more complex and more hopeful than they had been told. The suppressors noticed. Of course they did. Victor experienced the familiar pattern: accounts suspended, platforms removed, speaking invitations canceled. The soft censorship that had destroyed his academic career now followed him into the alternative space, but the network he had joined was resilient. For every platform that banned him, another emerged. For every event that canceled him, 3 more invited him. The truth was spreading faster than the suppression could contain it. 2 years after the encounter, Victor stood at Stonehenge during the summer solstice, surrounded by thousands of people who had gathered to witness the sunrise alignment. He thought about the being's words, about the network waiting to be reactivated, about the partial function that could be restored through collective intention. Around him, people meditated, prayed, focused their consciousness on the ancient stones. Victor didn't know if it was enough to matter, didn't know if their combined intention was creating any measurable effect on Earth's energy field, but he knew they were trying. Thousands of people at this site, thousands more at other sites around the world, a global movement of awakening consciousness that grew larger every year. Sarah had joined him. She was writing her own book now, about the dreams that had led her back to her father, about the journey from skepticism to openness. She had become a bridge between Victor's generation and her own, translating the ancient truths into language that younger seekers could receive. "Do you think it's working?" she asked, as the sun rose between the ancient stones. "The reactivation you talk about." Victor watched the light spread across the landscape, touching stones that had stood for thousands of years, waiting for humanity to remember their purpose. "I think it's beginning," he said. "I think every person who wakes up, every group that gathers at a place of power, every moment of focused intention adds to the total. We won't see the full results in our lifetime, but we're planting seeds that will grow for generations. Sarah took his hand, father and daughter, reunited by truth, standing in the shadow of ancient mystery. Mom would have loved this, Sarah said softly. Victor felt that presence again. Elena, close but not visible, warmth without form. She's here, he said. She loves it, and she's proud of both of us. The sun rose higher. The crowd around them began to disperse, but Victor and Sarah stood together for a long time, watching light play across stones that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, waiting patiently for the one that would finally remember what they were for. The temples were waking up, and so was humanity. One person at a time, one sacred site at a time, one moment of truth at a time, until the network was restored and the quarantine finally ended. Victor Anderson spent 28 years asking questions that destroyed his career. Then a being crashed in the hills of Turkey and revealed what the first temples really were. Not places of worship, not monuments to gods, technology. Consciousness technology designed to elevate humanity to its full potential. The temples were built by a civilization that your history books say never existed, a global network of sacred sites positioned at points of power, connected by lines of energy, designed to amplify human consciousness and maintain Earth's energetic health. That network was damaged 12,000 years ago. It has been waiting ever since for humanity to remember how to restore it. You have felt the pull, the inexplicable draw to ancient sites, the sense that standing among old stones connects you to something larger than yourself. That feeling is not imagination, it is recognition. Your consciousness responding to technology designed for exactly this purpose. The suppression is failing. Too many people are waking up. Too many researchers are asking the right questions. Too many seekers are gathering at places of power, adding their intention to a collective awakening that grows stronger every day. The institutions that have kept this truth hidden for millennia cannot stop what is coming. Every sacred site you visit matters. Every moment of focused intention at a place of power contributes to the reactivation. Every person who awakens adds to the critical mass that will eventually restore what was lost. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. What have you experienced at ancient sites? What have you always sensed about the temples that history cannot explain? And if you want more revelations like this one, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. The temples were never just buildings. They were blueprints for human evolution, and they have been waiting 12,000 years for you to remember.